My name is Rachel Bales, and my project's on Hydrilla, the invasive species in the Great Lakes. So what is Hydrilla? Hydrilla is a water plant that looks like a fern. It is found natively in places such as Australia, Asia, and Africa. This plant is an invasive species that was introduced to the Great Lakes. The scientific name for this plant is Hydrilla verticulata. This plant is famously known as one of the most invasive aquatic life forms known to the world. So you look to the right, you can see that it quite resembles a fern. The guy holding it is from the Twin Lakes Association, and he shows on his website for the Boaters Institute how Hydrilla looks from an upward angle and also just in general what to look out for. How Hydrilla became an invasive species to the Great Lakes. So it's theorized that Hydrilla came to the Great Lakes from attaching to other plants that were planted in people's private ponds. So ways that this could happen is from boating, from gear. Hydrilla's seeds are quite small, so it's really hard to see if Hydrilla is in the plants that you've ordered or on your swimming gear, as I say later. So Hydrilla most likely escaped these ponds by going through small river canals that were connected to these ponds, ending up in the Great Lakes. So it makes the most amount of sense, like I said earlier, that there were multiple ways of travel that made Hydrilla spread so quickly. And it can also get caught in fishing gear, so it's really important to dry out all of your gear after you're in the Great Lakes, or even especially your own ponds and stuff like that. It's very important not to have cross-contamination, just in case you have Hydrilla possibly in your pond or in other areas. And if you look to the right, I added a picture of a propeller to kind of show what I mean, that it's very easy for these seeds to attach. So how Hydrilla relates to our lives. So looking from an outside perspective, Hydrilla doesn't seem that serious. However, that's not correct. Hydrilla creates irreversible damage to aquatic life. It can take oxygen from water in lakes, therefore killing fish from oxygen depletion. Hydrilla also blocks waterways and causes the water flow to be disrupted in reservoirs. So Hydrilla is extremely dangerous to swim in because it tangles up people or animals. Hydrilla also can cause a disease known as vascular waterfowl. If you look to the right, these are photos of Hydrilla and the Great Lakes, and it kind of shows that it doesn't necessarily grow extremely long, but it mats together and, like I said, dominates or takes over the area it's in, therefore causing the invasive part of the species. So who is actually working to stop Hydrilla? So the primary organization that is trying to stop Hydrilla is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, or USACE. They manage and treat Hydrilla by applying a sort of weed killer to it. They also make sure to regularly check the affected areas to make sure nothing else can grow again after it, because like I said, the seeds are very small and very tricky. So it's recommended that anybody who sees Hydrilla immediately reports it, and the email is as follows. And at the bottom, I have a picture of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So what you can take away from this project is it's important to understand how something as simple as a plant can really change people's lives. It's also more important that people understand that aquatic life needs to be taken seriously, as, for example, cross-contamination of your gear. It's really important to make sure that nothing can come from your pond to the lake or to your lake to the pond, either way. Hopefully after this presentation, Hydrilla will be understand more, because it is a danger in more places than just the Great Lakes. If anybody sees an invasive species in general, it's really important to report it. So also, I have this YouTube video that I wanted to play that kind of explains in short terms what Hydrilla looks like and what to do.
Cumberland County, and unfortunately this lake has an invasive plant called Hydrilla. Hydrilla is considered by some the perfect weed. It's an aquatic invasive weed that can really potentially in some conditions overtake a lake. The native vegetation, while it grows, may clog up some areas. It doesn't really become a major nuisance in most cases. The Hydrilla can potentially grow several inches a day in prime conditions and can overtake a lake. The way that this stuff is spread around is on boats and fishing gear, primarily on boats, and so it's really important to make sure that you completely dry your boat, make sure that you pick off any bits of mud or aquatic vegetation that might be hanging on that boat before you use it in another lake. Go to fishandboat.com, go to our aquatic invasive species webpage, and there's a reporting forum for Hydrilla or any other potential aquatic invasive species that you may find to report that to the Fish and Boat Commission.
So as was said in the video, he talks about where Hydrilla is located, kind of what it looks like. And I also think it was really important what he said about making sure that your boat is cleaned out or dried out before you go on any other lakes. In general, if you're any type of like boat person or you like to swim or something like that, it's important to make sure that you're not cross-contaminating the waters from one side to another side, because invasive species are a really big thing, especially like ones like Hydrilla, who transfer their ecosystems with seeds. I also like in the video how he kind of talked about how there's another area to report invasive species. There's quite a lot of places to report invasive species. I think any sort of like .gov or anything like that, and they'll take care of it for you. In general, I think it's important if you're a boater or any type of water person to make sure you know what invasive species look like and what to do if you encounter these invasive species. And that's why I think videos like this really help get the point across to people, like what to do. And as I was researching, I feel like I learned a lot from these types of videos for people who are actually educated in the field of invasive species. And then these are my references.